Greetings everybody, welcome. It is Rob from Untitled Games, and I'm here with a video talking about a new game that is coming out. It is a new tabletop LCG game. You may have heard about it if you're in the scene, and that is Earthborne Rangers. Now, Earthborne Rangers is a game that was created by Earthborne Games, and the company was founded by Andrew Navarro, who is or was the former head of studio for Fantasy Flight Games, as well as a few other Fantasy Flight Games staff kind of moved over to this new studio. This game is an LCG, similar to Marvel Champions, similar to Arkham Horror, and that it's that kind of a game for being an LCG, but it is quite different in nature and how the game actually plays. This game has a rather open campaign of exploration, exploring the wilderness. The game has a sustainability, environmentally friendly idea behind it. The company as a whole is kind of designed to have this whole sustainability as one of its major aspects, and kind of talks about how they look to print the game, produce the game, while keeping it as low carbon footprint as possible. Now, what I decided to do to kind of help go through some of this game is to go through some of the rules for the game, kind of break it out, talk about the game, and take a bit of a deep dive into the game. There are some images out there, and I may be able to get them on the screen for you guys as we talk about it. But until then, let's just deep dive into the rules, and we'll talk about them. So the first thing is some of the basic concepts of the actual game itself. And for this, I'm going to kind of blow it up for you guys so you guys can see a bit more clearly. So, Rangers. In the game, you play as a ranger. You essentially can make your own character who is a ranger. Your ranger, different aspects or different elements of what your character is good at. And it talks about it in 4 different types: awareness, fitness, focus, and spirit. So awareness, represented by green, is how good you're at observing things, studying, or processing the world. Fitness is your physical stat. This is the one you use to fight, maybe for agility, for endurance, for those kind of physical demanding tasks. That'll be your fitness stat. Focus is your knowledge stat, because it's kind of your intelligence stat. And spirit is your inner strength, kind of sense of self, and usually you can use spirit to kind of connect with things, or kind of calm yourself to kind of deal with your fatigue. And it's represented by a different aspect card, which has different numbers on them, and that determines how many tokens you get for those specific aspects. So you may have one ranger who has a 3 in fitness, so he can do 3 fitness tests or have 3 points to give towards fitness. But maybe he only has a 1 in awareness, so he's not as good as in the aware section. Then you may have someone else who has 3 focus and is very knowledgeable, but only a 1 in fitness, is not that strong. So they have to kind of use their brain more to figure out how to deal with some of the more physically demanding tasks. And basically the way it works is you use these tokens on the access board that you kind of get, and you can use them to participate in tasks or tests, if you will, and you can use more of them to give yourself a better boost. You can also use them to play cards that you may have in your hand to play, so value gear, possibly moments, which are kind of event cards. Those kind of cards will be used with these kind of resources. Talks about your role, which kind of is your character essentially, and there's a few different types which we'll go about a bit later. Your deck is your life pool essentially. When you run out of your deck, that's when the day ends, that's when the game essentially ends. And then we're going to talk about the valley. So the valley is essentially the world that we kind of set up in here. It's based, kind of inspired by the Colorado Rockies, the wilderness, and it's a pretty big, I think in the demo that we have, or that we've seen, and will be showing up on Tabletop Simulator is about, I want to say 4 or 5 locations, but the actual game itself will have, I think they said about 40 locations on the map, plus different ways to get to them, and there'll be a lot more different options for how to explore them all. So the play area, and the way the play area is set up in this one is kind of cool, in that you have your play area as the ranger, and then you have what's called within reach. So these are cards that are in front of you. Then you have cards that are called along the way, which is kind of like a common zone that all the players can interact with as well. And then you have the landscape, which is kind of like where you are, your like location card, if you will. And that's one step beyond that. And the way it works is that if you want to interact with a card that's along the way, you have to deal with the stuff that's within your reach of you, or it may fatigue you and impact you before you get to that. Same thing with if you want to go interact with the landscape, anything within reach and anything along the way will get in your way to interact with the landscape. So before we go into creating your character, which is quite a bit, or how to play the game, let's take a look at some of the images from Kickstarter that they do have, that they've shown us. And then we can kind of talk a bit about the cards themselves before we go into how to play the game and how to build a character. So we'll just kind of hop over here to the actual Kickstarter. You can see the art style is very nice. It has a very nice color scheme. It's very, very visually appealing. I think this is a very cool image as well. I'll just blow this up as well for you guys. So for instance, we see over here Ring of the Moon, which is a landscape card. So the way this card kind of works is you see over here 710 is like a journal entry that you read in a book, similar to how you would in any sort of campaign type game. The 2 is a present, so for particular tests that you may have to like test against that 2 value. And if you want to travel or kind of leave this place, you have to get enough progress on it, which is equal to 4 times however many players there are. And we've seen similar things for like Arkham, for Marvel, that the difficulty changes based on how many players are in the game. There is a skill test on it as well, awareness. Behold, it kind of says choose a nearby landscape, attach one of its landmarks to that landscape. So it kind of adds landmarks. That's a different type of card. What's cool about this is it gives you like the verdant expanse before you to basically kind of like the flavor text is there, but then they gray it out and bold the actual like game impact text, so that you see the game text, but the flavor text is still there and it's not like on a separate line. In this case, it is a difficulty of 3 tests that you must complete. As we kind of talked about, awareness is your like observing task. So it's the green tokens. And basically what you're doing is you're essentially looking kind of like over the hills, over the forests, and seeing a landmark someplace nearby. And that's how the card's essentially adding it to the game. This is pretty cool. It talks about majestic wildlife. There's very different creatures in this game. So we have a Sitka buck, which is kind of like almost like a deer, like a buck, but it's obviously a bit different, a bit evolved. And looking at the anatomy of this card, this is a being. So it has a 2 that's present. So if you ever try to like do something past it, like say it's within reach, you take 2 fatigue if you don't deal with it. This little arrow next to it points either down or points up. If it points down, it means when it comes into play, it's within reach of you. If it points up, that means it's along the way. So it's in that common area in front of everybody. And this little red star symbol means that's how much damage it can take before it gets cleared. And you'll see over here these 3 different lines, which are essentially whenever you take a test, you flip over a card, and it gives you a random modifier to the test. At the bottom of all these cards is a symbol, and whatever symbol shows up triggers anything that has that symbol on it. So in this case, you see there's a sun, a mountain, some sort of bird, or some sort of crest. So what happens is, say you take a test, you flip over a sun. Well, then this ability triggers that says if there's another active one, exhaust it and add 2 damage to both of them. Basically, the bucks are fighting each other. Same thing like the mountains. Essentially, if there's an active predator, the predator takes some damage, and then the predator attacks the buck back. So you can see different things happen depending on what symbol flips up. Red ones usually seem to be the worst for you as a player. You will take damage. So that's always the most dangerous ones. Contend with dangerous predators. So right here we see a predator, an Aatrox, which is kind of almost like a tiger, sort of feline type creature. Again, 2 presence, 4 health. It spawns within reach of you, so it spawns in front of you. This one has a fitness challenge. Remember, that's your like physical demanding one. And you can see it says you're challenging the hunter, the territorial creature. And if you pass it, it goes on top of the deck. So basically you can kind of put it back away, not get rid of it, but at least you can kind of get it out of the way for now. Ambush, I believe, means it automatically fatigues you when it comes into play. So in this case, you would take 2 damage from it. And you can see kind of what I talked about for the tests. The sun, if there's another active predator, they fight. And if it's a crest, it damages you, goes after you. So if you're tired enough. So again, it kind of leans on that. Red means bad for you, yellow or blue might change the board state possibly. Another thing to note is you can see on the bottom of this card it says mountain. That's kind of a different set. So for instance, if you're exploring in the mountains, you'll find an Aatrox, where like the Sitka bucks are in the forest. So it's a different set depending on what kind of where you are on the map. And these are the cool arts for all the different Rangers in the game. They all look pretty cool. Red, white, blue, kind of green, different colors. They have different classes as well, and so kind of some of the tokens you can see. And right here you can see some of the different cards that they have. Balance is a moment card, so kind of like an event card, if you will. Both the spider pad gloves and the pocket bell pouch are gear. You have equipment to play. You have a sheepdog, which is kind of like an ally, which you can see has health and can kind of do different things depending on like, it can help exhaust things, it can help move things around and heal you. So this is just a bit of a preview of the actual map. This is partially what is kind of in the actual demo. White Sky, Golden Shore, Mountain Nim, Aatrox, and the Northern Outpost. So you see, I think there's also Lone Tree. It's kind of cut off in this one. So 6 locations, I believe, are in the demo to explore and have fun with. And that's just this one little segment. The map is much bigger. And you kind of see some of the cards here. And essentially this little section over here, I'll just kind of scroll down a bit, is the aspect card that I was talking about. So for instance, this character that is set up on the screen has 1 fitness, 2 awareness, 2 focus, and 3 spirit. So they're really good at spirit tests, but they aren't that physically strong. So they may have, find some other ways to deal with physical challenges like the Aatrox, for instance. And this is just a bit of a little preview of kind of how the cards look at. In my next video, I'll be talking about the different ways to kind of build Ranger. We haven't really seen that in person yet. That's kind of still, that's not in the demo. The demo that we've seen have pre-constructed decks, but they've talked about how to build a deck, and it's pretty in-depth. There's a lot of different ways to build one. So that'll be in the next video, and then we'll get around to actually showing how the game plays and how the game works. Hopefully by then it'll be on Tabletop Simulator. I can show it to you in person as well. Otherwise, be sure to comment and subscribe and like this video. Earthborne Rangers looks a really cool game. I'm definitely excited to see more of it and actually play more of it. And let me know what you guys think about this game in the comments down below. It's another LCG, so it's definitely gonna be cool to play, and I think it's gonna be a very strong game and a brand new way to kind of look at how to make games, this kind of sustainable way of making a game. So thank you guys for watching this video, and be sure to subscribe for more Earthborne Rangers content. Thank you.